Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is July 2nd. There is a hell of a lot going on. I'm going to do the best that I can to try to distill it for you. This will be a shorter call out of necessity. We're, at this point, being contacted by, when you consider fax, telephone, email, camel, probably over 100 people a day. So if I have not gotten back to you, I apologize for that. It's certainly not for a lack of trying. So when we're done this call, I will be back on the phone, and for however long it takes, you will hear from me, because I believe we're rounding the fourth turn here with the Iraqi dinar and perhaps some of these other currencies as well. And so I know we want to get everything done, dot all our I's, cross all our T's, and be ready to go when this event occurs. So let's go ahead and get in with what we wanted to talk about today. The first thing I wanted to discuss was the Iraqi budget. To say that the situation is complicated or even convoluted would probably be an understatement. I don't like the parliamentary system. I think it's a little bit confusing, but particularly the parliamentary system that was established in Iraq, because in addition to all of the foibles of a parliamentary system, we have a layer of the tribal things going on there as well. So there's a cultural dynamic to this as well as the political one, and sometimes it's hard to grasp what's going on. The major issues are, in my opinion, chaos within the parliament, particularly the Shia/pro-Iranian factions within the parliament, and some issues with the federal Supreme Court as well. However, having said that, I think there's a very good chance that we could be in the banks this month, and I'll get into my reasons for that in a second. Now, Iraq, of course, continues to work toward security and stability. It's the in politics term. It's the term that everyone uses to explain where they need to be in order for the dinar to hit the 4x. And there are some important players in this. One, of course, is Prime Minister Soudani. I was really a fan of his initially, but as time goes on, I have less and less faith in him, although I don't think he's in a position to stop the momentum in country, but he's certainly not leading the charge, in my opinion, as he seemed to have been a while back. However, he did recently warn the pro-Iranian factions in the parliament to stop all of their obstructionism. As an American citizen, we see that in full display in our own Congress just this week. So we see how that can be a factor. But in a situation where we're looking for this country to literally create their own domestic currency, this is really a difficult situation. Then there's President Salih, who says that they are still seeking security and stability. So, again, that's the ultimate goal. That's the prerequisite for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. One of the reasons there is a problem, though, was the external factor of Iran. And Iran has done everything it can to make life difficult for the nation state of Iraq. And until Trump came along, presidents were unfortunately unwilling to put a stop to it. Excuse me. Trump, however, in my opinion, with his recent attack on Iran, has pretty much neutralized them, at least for sufficient time for Iraq to obtain that security and stability that they need. So there's still one thing that needs to be done before the Iraqi government reveals their new rate and the release of their lower denoms. And that is, of course, not just passage of the budget, but it going to the Supreme Court. There's one article in the budget that we need to take a closer look at. That's Article 12-2C, where Baghdad is to reimburse Erbil for the cost of the production and transport of each barrel of oil. And in order for that article to be manifest, they need one thing. They need the rate. So that's where we are now. And that's why I said we could be in the banks this month, because all we need is a rate. And everything going on in the country right now, in my opinion, is based on the assumption that we will see that rate shortly. So, for example, the CBI operations, we see their work with anti-laundering, with anti-counterfeiting, with the establishment of the education and training program for citizens. Well, none of this is necessary at 1310. It's only necessary if the Iraqi dinar is reinstituted. Then we have the Council of Ministers working on salaries, the HCL, the final passage of the budget, the Baghdad and Erbil oil exports, and the closing of the gap between the official and parallel rate. Again, all of this points to the new rate, not the status quo of 1310. And then we have, through the CBI and the government of Iraq, the finalized international contracts to rebuild their infrastructure and to rebuild their national defense. Again, impossible at 1310. So this is why I believe that we're looking at a new rate that we should see this month. I've never given a date and a rate in the past. I'm not giving a date and a rate now, but I am giving a time frame. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I've been on the phone nonstop. My voice is about gone. Then, of course, we have the banking reforms, compliance with international banking standards, the transition to electronic/digital banking, which are all prerequisites for the release of the new rate and the release of the lower denoms. Again, there's no reason to do any of this at 1310. There's no reason for any of the anti-laundering or anti-counterfeiting or the establishment of training programs for citizens. There's no reason to have new salaries, passage of the HCL, the budget, oil exports, rebuilding of the infrastructure and national defense, and reforms to the banking. None of this makes any sense or is necessary at 1310, but all of it is necessary if there's going to be a new rate. So this is where we find ourselves. Now, there's one other thing that makes me bullish on this month. No one can give you a guarantee of it, again, a date or a rate, or even a week or a month. But I feel like this is the month that this could take place. I call it the Trump factor. And one thing Trump keeps repeating, excuse me, is preparing America for a new golden age. And I've discussed this in the past. When he says a new golden age, he's referring to our first golden age, a period of time roughly between 1880 and 1990, when the United States became a truly wealthy nation. It accumulated its wealth externally through tariffs, not internally through a federal income tax. There was no federal income tax during the first golden age because there was no Federal Reserve until after the establishment of the golden age. It's interesting that Trump keeps talking about a new golden age because everything he's doing is pointing to, and I'll explain this in a little more detail, he's neutralized Iran, probably permanently. He's reduced inflation. He's closed the border. He's returning to enriching the nation through an external wealth system, i.e. tariffs. He's basically begun to end the federal income tax, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and the huge one is no tax on Social Security. The only thing left is no tax, period. His objective, in my opinion, is to end the Federal Reserve and fiat currency and return to an asset-backed currency that's free from federal income taxes. So this is where we find ourselves. So nations like China will no longer be able to corner the trade market by devaluing their currency. And nations like Iraq and Vietnam will be genuinely wealthy nations because their currencies on the Forex will be what's referred to as Basel compliant. And what do I mean by Basel compliant? Well, we need to go back quite a ways. But as a denarian, as an individual that's considering investing in currencies, we need to ask ourselves a question. How do we turn a $1,000 investment in the Iraqi dinar into a $3.25 million return? Huge return. Well, let's just take a little history lesson here to see how we got here, because it took over 100 years, literally, for us to get to this point. We have to go back all the way to 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve and a fiat currency, meaning a currency not based on the known natural resources of a given country, not backed by anything other than the full faith and credit of that individual government. So in 1913, we created the Federal Reserve, which was not federal, not a reserve. It was our third central bank. Then we moved to 1944, the end of the Second World War. There was something called the Bretton Woods Conference. And after World War II, the U.S. dollar became the world reserve currency, meaning that it was the currency that other nations, through their central banks, held to prop up the value of their own currency. And that carried through till 1971, but then something happened in 1971. We went off the gold standard and went to a, I would say, quasi-fiat currency, and we moved to a petrodollar system, meaning that the purchase of oil globally had to be done with the U.S. dollar. That means central banks around the world had to exchange their currency for the U.S. dollar in order to purchase oil. And, of course, everyone needed oil literally to survive, so that U.S. dollar had hegemony over every other currency. Then in 1988, something called Basel compliance came along. Basel compliance was a 5-phase process where currencies had to be backed, country to country, from the known natural resources in that country and their ability to bring those resources to market. So in 1988, we were at phase 1 of the 5-phase Basel compliant protocol. 1990, Iraq invades Kuwait. 1991, Iraq is removed from Kuwait through a group of allied forces led by the United States, and the Iraqi dinar, as punishment, was placed in a program rate, meaning that the Iraqi dinar was basically worthless. 1993, investors began to purchase the worthless IQD with the prospect, that the currency would once again hit the Forex. Many people thought that it would not be a matter of years, it might even be a matter of months. Well, how wrong we all were. We're now in 2025, roughly 32 years later. Iraq has rebounded. They've rebuilt their country. They've made restitution to Kuwait for the invasion. As I've stated on previous calls, in my opinion, Iraq per square mile might be the richest country in the world when you factor in their known natural resources and now their ability to bring those resources to market. So when the IQD hits the 4X, and again, in my opinion, that's going to be shortly, it's going to hit the 4X at a Basel IV compliant rate, which means, in my opinion, conservatively, each Iraqi dinar will be worth $3.22, which is what it was worth when it was placed in a program rate. But based on some of the currency speculators I've talked with and discussed on my previous calls, they think whatever rate it comes at, initially, it's going to be close to, if not worth $5, making it the strongest currency on planet Earth, which means if you purchased $1 million dinar for $1,000 10 years ago, you're going to go to the bank to exchange it, and you will receive anything from roughly $3.25 million to $5 million for a $1,000 investment. Now, most investors would say that's impossible. Well, it was only this 100-year history that I went through that made it possible. It's a perfect storm. It's never happened before. It's never going to happen again. I can't think of anything other than literally a lottery ticket that could pay you more than what this did for your initial investment. So this is where we find ourselves. Now, how did Trusts Unlimited get involved in this? Very simply, Trusts Unlimited is an estate planning firm. And there is one principle of estate planning that is rarely used but very important. When an individual finds themselves in a position to possess an asset that they expect for whatever reason to increase substantially in value, it behooves them to get that asset out of title and into a protective trust before it increases in value. So you purchased 10 million dinar for $10,000. You've been sitting on it for 10 years. Now it looks like that $10,000 investment can be worth anything from $32 million, to $50 million. So you want to get it out of title and into trust. Why? This is why. Because by getting that asset out of title into trust, you've preserved your privacy and your anonymity. No one knows what you're worth or what you possess. 1 out of 4 millionaires is sued in their lifetime, and half of those suits are frivolous in nature. They know you got money, they just want some of it. But that won't be the case here, because you operate with your Social Security number, your trust operates under an EIN number, everything in the trust is sealed, so unless someone can go to a court of law and show cause, establish that you have defrauded them, they can't even find out what's in the trust. So your privacy and your anonymity is protected. Second, you're going to avoid IRS scrutiny. Why? Because all of the activities are occurring within the trust. Now, the IRS likes to go after low-hanging fruit. So are they going to go after Joe Lunchbox making $47,000 a year, or are they going to go after a very sophisticated trust that they rightly believe has been represented by a very sophisticated legal team? The third reason you'd want to establish this trust is if you want to do pre-RV gifting to certain individuals. Now, you can gift currencies to friends and family pre-RV in order to avoid a federal gift tax. But a lot of people have contacted us and said over the years, well, I'd really like to help these people out, but for whatever reason, I just don't think I can give them a large sum of money. Well, we've created a special gift subtrust within our package, meaning you can gift the currencies to the individual pre-RV, you can avoid the federal gift tax, and you will have control of the post-RV proceeds, which means that you can manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. By avoiding the cost and delay of probate, No one will know the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stands to inherit. So not only was your privacy protected, but so was that of your heirs. And because your assets are in trust, you will avoid the federal estate tax, which can be as much as 55% of your estate in excess of $12 million, which means that not only will your heirs receive privately their respective inheritance, but they will receive 100 cents on the dollar tax-free. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust is for the asset protection it provides. Pre-RV, it allows you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What do I mean by that? You have 10 million dinar that you paid $10,000 for. You transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $3. You now have 30 million in trust. Can you be sued for 30 million? No. Why? Because the currencies were only worth 10,000 when you transferred them out of personal title. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through something called segregation of assets. This is why we have a package of trusts. So as you purchase assets, homes, cars, boats, etc., you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by the master trust. Now, how does this protect you from future bad acts? Well, let's say one day you're driving your new car, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, you own nothing, so suing you would serve no purpose because, remember, civil suits are about monetary rewards, and you don't own anything. So they're left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your sub-trusts of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that sub-trust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. So in that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the plaintiff in the case, and you are free and clear. Because all of your other assets are in separate sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. So if you're the individual that has currencies, particularly the IQD, the Iraqi dinar, you are most likely going to be a very wealthy person in the very near future. So it would behoove you to, at the very least, contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can learn a lot about trusts, how they work, how they protect you, and other things that you can do. I'll just give you one example. You set up our trust. You have 10 million dinar. Let's say you get $1 for it. You now have 10 million in trust. There are some charitable organizations you'd really like to help. So you take $2 million of that 10 million and you place it in a charitable remainder trust, meaning that when you die, that charity gets that $2 million. But it also means that all of the income generated from that charitable remainder trust during your lifetime is tax-free income to you. And because it's tax-free, that means you can invest it much more conservatively and still have a good return on a net basis. But those are all post-RV examples I'm giving you. The reason I'm touching on them is because I think that's going to be the subject of our discussions in the very near future. So if you're interested in the things we've discussed, I hope you will contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. You can contact us by phone or email. Our email address is trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. Contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to get our initial package out to you. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions. If you're ready to proceed, again, everything you need is included in the package. We will do everything we can to assist you. Now, our next call will be next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I'm sorry this is a shorter call, but it's short for two reasons. Again, one, a lot of people have contacted us. Some of them are existing trust holders. Some of them want to establish a trust. And at this point in time, I need to get back to them as quickly as I can. And second, I need to go take something from my throat because I can barely talk. I'm doing the best that I can, but I will be on the phone as long as it takes to contact all of you, and I would greatly appreciate your patience. I'm doing the best that I can to get back in touch with each and every one of you and answer any questions that you may have. So thanks so much for listening to this call. We're in a very, very good place, and I didn't even touch on all of the domestic things going on in this country right now. No, you know what? I am going to touch on them briefly. We have low inflation. We have a closed border. We have the imminent passage of a bill that's going to reduce our taxes, increase our investment environment, and on top of that, we're going to be in the banks exchanging our currency, and we're going to have the money to take advantage of all of the great environment that's being created by this administration. So we're in a very, very good place. We ought to thank God for it because we've never been in a place like this before, and we'll never be here again for all of the reasons I've discussed. So thanks so much for listening to this call. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do so, and I look forward to speaking with you all next week, unless, of course, you're one of the individuals that's contacted us, and you will hear from me sometime today, however long that takes. So take care. Have a great week, everyone. God bless.